And so the matrix is compiled of several hierarchies, and those hierarchies are put in place to keep a lot of artificial power in the hands of a few. And that power that is in the hands of the few is there and enables those few to control the masses. We are the masses, and we are being controlled by a few people at the tippy top. Hello, 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 and welcome back to Bri Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Bri Speaks, and today we will be talking about The Matrix. And no, not yes, the movie, but no, not the movie. The Matrix is the compilation of all of the systems that are set up to make us fail. The systems that are set up to turn the world upside down from its natural order and put us in a place of scarcity, a place of survival, a place of separation where we don't like one another, a place of hierarchy where we think someone is on top of someone else, someone is better than someone else, a place of where we look for things and answers outside of us. We look for external validation and we don't look inside. We don't introspect. We don't see how we are worthy and valid and worth all of the things, all the good things. And we don't see that because these systems have been telling us all of our value is outside of us. If you have enough money, if you look good enough, if you have the right women or whatever, that's what makes you worthy in the matrix. But I'm really excited because I have created an image, a diagram, a visual, which I'll show you in a little bit, that explains all of what I have found to be all of the largest components of the matrix and how we're all trapped in it, and how how can we get out of the matrix? We'll figure that out together. That is that is together. We'll figure that out. And so the matrix is compiled of several hierarchies, and those hierarchies are put in place to keep a lot of artificial power in the hands of a few, and that power that is in the hands of the few is there and enables those few to control the masses. Right? We are the masses, and we are being controlled by a few people at the tippy top, and that's not just talking about money either. So we'll get into it. But something else I really want to call out while we go over these hierarchies in this matrix is that the second level, people think that it's the first level of the matrix that is the most important. A peek inside the matrix is, the billionaire class is at the top of one of the matrices. Board members who control who pull a lot of the invisible strings behind corporate America are a part of the matrix. And then white people, of course, are at the top of the matrix. And so a lot of people feel like the people at the top are the most powerful. And I will say the people at the top of the matrix are the most powerful, but they're not the most important. They are not the most important to upholding the matrix. That is actually the second layer of all of the hierarchies within the matrix. So so I want to talk about that too, and the significance of what it means if you are in the second level of the matrix, and how much power that gives you, and how the illusion of that second layer is integral for the upholding of the entire structure. Okay, so that's a lot. If you are listening on Spotify, you will have to look at, click the link in the bio for the YouTube version of this. But I am going to share on YouTube a picture of the matrix that I have come up with. Okay, let me break this down. It's a lot, and I know I'm really proud of this. I made it up myself, but these are the systems of control that are in place that a lot of people don't even see or notice or believe exist, but they absolutely exist. And but there's power in them being in these invisible like structures that control our everyday lives that a lot of people, again, don't notice or see. And I will say the people who don't notice or see the most are the people in the second layer, which is why they're so important. So hang on to that. So let me just walk through this. So on the left-hand side, we have, this is a pyramid, and this pyramid represents it represents one of two things. One is like population. So how many people are in this, first, second, third, or fourth, or fifth layer. There are 5 layers to each of these hierarchies. And so it could be population. So like 50% of the population, 24% of the population, 15% of the population, 10%, and the 1%. And then, or depending on the category that we'll be talking about, it also can represent just the position in the hierarchy that category is in. So this mostly applies to the racial category. So it says, white people are at the top, but white people are obviously more than 1% of the population, but they are at the top of this racial hierarchy. So the positioning for all of them represents, if they are at the top versus the bottom, but the percentages may or may not apply depending on the category. If you are in the purple class of one of these columns, that doesn't mean you're in the purple class of all of these columns. I had that question before. And if you are in the purple class, that doesn't mean you'll always be in the purple class for every one of these. And then also, this is not going to be perfect. It's just because, there are always going to be exceptions to every rule. But this is a kind of high level overview of these systems, how they work and how they're related and how they keep people in bondage, in mental bondage and in mental control. But it doesn't mean it's going to fit every single person all the time. So for the patriarchy, the traditional hetero man might be at the top and queer people might be at the bottom, but that doesn't mean, you won't have a queer person who has power in a business, or like it doesn't mean that a queer person won't be, a successful person. So, and as a matter of fact, there is always exceptions to the rule, as to be specific, and that is another way that these systems are upheld. Is they like to point to the exceptions to the rule in order to uphold the narrative that there is no systemic oppression. There is no system in place to keep people down. That is a fallacy, because look, I can point to this one Jerry, Billy, Bob, Sarah, Sue, who is a marginalized person, and they made it. And so why are you complaining just because you haven't made it? That means you're not working hard enough. So the exceptions to the rule are always going to be there, and they are actually a feature of the systems of oppression, not a bug. And I think another good example of that is when I think about the Black Panthers. They were a very successful cohort or coalition of people, obviously fighting for Black liberation. But the Black Panthers they were very anti-capitalist. They were very anti-capitalist. They were very communist. They were very pushing the fact that capitalism is a racist system, because of the fact that wherever there's capitalism, there's going to be a top and there's going to be a bottom. There's never going to be equality. And if there's always going to be a bottom, a lower class of people, that lower class of people will always be like discriminated against, and that lower class of people is always going to be Black people. It's always going to be Black people. It's always been Black people. It's always going to be Black people. And so they were very anti-capitalist, and Black people were like buying into it. They were understanding it. They were starting to believe it. And because it was such an effective movement, the U.S. government dismantled them. And not only did they dismantle them, but they started producing the bourgeoisie, or like the black bourgeoisie, or the Black excellence kind of party. And essentially it was Black people who ended up becoming millionaires through capitalism. They allowed that to happen. They encouraged that to happen, so that there would then be that example of, hey, look, you can use you can be a millionaire as a Black person. This can work for you. You just have to work hard enough. You are not the exception. You are not, they are not the exception. They are the rule. They are part of the rule, that if you do what you're supposed to do in capitalism, you will be successful. So I just want to be I want to be very clear that there are going to be exceptions to literally all of these, but they do that on purpose to ensure that people have hope. They want you to have hope that you can make it out the system, because as long as you have hope, you will keep trying, and you won't think it's a system. You will think that it is an individual problem. Like, and another example that I always give is Squid Games. Squid Games is, one in, I think it's like 600 people is going to win the Squid Games, but 600 people will go into the Squid Games thinking that they will be that one who wins. Same thing, it's like buying a lottery ticket. It's like the lottery ticket has so much money because everyone keeps playing the lottery because everyone thinks they're going to win. That is literally what these systems are. These systems create a system where everyone, so with the Squid Games, you think you're going to win, you think you'll be that 1 in 600, but at the end of the day, only one person wins. And guess what? 599 people passed away. 599 people did not win. And so when you look at it from a statistical standpoint, you have a 1 in 600 shot of winning, but that's what people like to hear, but that you have a 599 out of 600 chance of dying in the Squid Games. So people like they don't, but that's the system of the Squid Games is, instead of having all of this money, they had like 600 billion won or whatever, and everyone gets 100 billion won, and everyone goes about their day. They want you to fight in the Squid Game so that only one person can win and one person can become a part of this elite class. All right, so if you pay attention to history, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, because that is a feature, not a bug, to the system of oppression, essentially, so that people will always have hope. Because if everyone in the world realizes that's all a scam, when they all realize the jig is up, okay, then the system won't work, and then the people who are in the position of power, then the elite class will fall, because because there's always going to be more of us than that. Patriarchy, the first system of oppression, the first kind of like pillar of the matrix. To be in the 1%, to be in the elite class of the patriarchy specifically, you have to be a traditional man. And this is a heterosexual man, masculine presenting, like big and strong. If you have money, you are, that is, stereotypically a man. If you have money or resources, and controls a woman and or children. And I specifically said controls because even if you're not married, like the patriarchy prefers you to be married for sure. But if you can show that you control a woman, then you will still be, and usually, again, that's usually by marriage, but you will be at the top of the patriarchal pyramid. Okay, so I've changed it because now as I was talking through it, I was like, yeah, nah, this feels better. So the patriarchy, when we're looking at the patriarchy, and the patriarchy is really upheld by traditional gender roles. So the top of the patriarchy is going to be your traditional man, and this is your heterosexual man, your masculine presenting. You have money, you have control over a woman and or children, and that control looks like marriage typically. But if you're in a long-term partnership with a feminine presenting woman, then you are at the top of the patriarchy. Next are your traditional woman, and this is a very important role. Remember this whole red level. I'll circle back to it at the end, but it's a very important level. But these people, these people are important because they uphold the structure. Remember that. But this is going to be the traditional woman. She's going to be a heterosexual woman, feminine presenting, enslaved by a man, so usually married, and has children with that man. That is, she's doing everything right. Next is our non-traditional men, but masculine presenting. These men, they may not have money, they may not have acquired a woman, so they may or may not be married. So these are like, single men, but as long as you don't, show up in the world as gay or feminine or too weird or strange, you will still have privileges in this ranking system. Next is your non-traditional woman, but feminine presenting. So non-traditional means not married, no kids. This woman might be older, right? Because if you're an older woman without a man and kids, in the patriarchy, God forbid, you're probably a witch. And then at the bottom of the patriarchy is where queer people. These are our LGBTQ folks who present as LGBTQ, because you can be here. Because I'm a bisexual woman myself, or really I would call myself queer. I don't really I would call myself, I'm a queer woman myself, but I present as a traditional woman. I am a feminine presenting, hetero presenting. I'm married and I have a child. So I live in this second, um, the second gender role here when it comes to the patriarchy, although I technically am a queer person, but I don't, all of this is all surface level, what people can see. All of these systems are about external validation, external things that people can see to validate a worth. So none of so that what's on the inside doesn't matter here. And all that, all the introspection, looking inside yourself, caring about who you are as a person and your individual alignment as a human being, all that out the window when it comes to the matrix, when it comes to these systems that are put together to keep us all, in line. So doesn't matter what's on the inside. If you look the part, if your numbers show these things, then that is what matters. So, and then if you present as a queer person, this is if you present as a trans person, if you present as a lesbian or a gay man, or if you're a feminine man, or if you're a masculine woman, if you do not fit those traditional gender roles at meets the eye, then you are a problem and you are in this bottom 50% of power. So that's patriarchy. The next system, class capitalism, which also is class. So this is classism essentially. The tippity top, the people who have the most power and control, but the smallest population, are the billionaire class. We know who the billionaires are. Next are the millionaires. These are the business owners. These are the people who made it. They did everything right. They played the capitalist game and they were super smart, and it had nothing to do with luck, of course. Not the fact that they were born anywhere, or if they were born with money, or if they were born with intelligence, or none of that. That luck does not exist in capitalism. They played the game. They played the game correctly. Now they are millionaire business owners, and entrepreneurs. And why aren't you? All right. Next are our upper working class. These are our doctors, our lawyers, like the people who went to school. They probably have mountains of debt, but they showed that when you work hard, you'll come out with a really good job that can earn you some sort of status in society. And so that's who these guys are. Our middle class are our teachers, our nurses, our technicians, etc. Like folks who don't necessarily have like a higher degree or professional degree, but they got their bachelor's and they're working and, they are making a living for themselves in this economy. That's probably not that great of a living. And because of the value that we put on these jobs, they are valuable jobs to society, but because they don't, create all this extra money, we have them in this lower pocket of this lower 24% of the society. And then, of course, your lower class are your essential workers is what we called them during the pandemic. But these guys are our drivers. They drive our buses. This says cashiers. I'm supposed to say cashiers. Our stalkers, people who stock our grocery stores, like people who without them, the society literally would not run. They are essential, and that's why they had to go to work, although they didn't want to during the pandemic and everyone else could work from home. And it's like we know how important they are to society and that society couldn't run without them, but for some reason they get paid the least amount of money. Isn't that weird? But that's how capitalism works, you guys. It does, as long as someone owns you and your work and your labor and controls you, systems of control. Are y'all listening? Then you are not, you do not have control over your time. They people who actually create the value, this bottom blue level, you'll find that these are the people who create the most value. They create the most value for the system, for the system as a whole, but they are appreciated the less. They have the least amount of like social status, and they have the least control over they have the least autonomy when it comes to controlling their own destinies and their own futures from an external perspective. Remember that, because of the system that they are in and the system of control that is being enacted upon them. All right. Corporate and classes are kind of, they're like fraternal sisters and fraternal twins, if I'm being honest. Like maybe even, I don't want to call them identical twins because not all board members are billionaires. But they are very closely related. They are fraternal twins at the minimum. They are a system of control, but corporate is, again, it's just really a reflection of capitalism. But I wanted to put it in here because it is such a a beautiful example of a system of control that is put in place to give a very tiny amount of people a lot of artificial power that mentally controls the people who are in the majority. And so corporate is the top 1% are the board members. You have a board. If I don't know if you know, some people don't know this, but for most corporations, especially public corporations that you can buy on the stock market, they are controlled by board members. And I would put board members and shareholders. I would also put here, 'cause, and the shareholders, those are the billionaires. So board members, shareholders, they are in the background. They are these puppeteers, and you never see them. They're not the face of the company. That is the CEO, the CFO, the C-suite, but they actually have more power. They are the boss to the CEO. Like the CEO goes to the board and says, "Hey, board, can I do this or can we do that?" And the board will say, I guess so, yes or no, little puppeteer. But the CEO, CFO, CSO, COO, or the C-suite of the company they are the millionaires. They are the hospital CEOs that are making $1 million salaries. They are the corporate CEOs that are making hundreds of millions of dollars per year, especially in stocks and bonuses and all this other crazy stuff. These are the ones you can see. Um, Senior vice presidents are underneath them, middle management underneath them, and then you got your individual contributors, which are your everyday workers in your corporate America. And these are like, your consultants, or like your analysts, not even your consultants. Consultants are probably more middle management, but your analysts, like the people who actually gather the data, analyze the data, put the data together, all the people who does the grunt work, they are here and they provide so much value to the company, but they are paid the least. Crazy. And then racism. Of course, there's racism. Racism is always there. Racism is everywhere in America. So the highest ranking race in the globe, honestly, at this current point, is the white person, or the Caucasian or Euro descended person. Then they, in America specifically, they put Asian second as the model minority. Right? They put them second as like, if you do what you're supposed to do and you do everything we tell you to do, you too can rise to the top. Like if you just play the Squid Games, you too can rise to the top. If you do this, you too can rise to the top. While the whole system is there of oppression, but you'll get a few who pop through anyway. So they uphold the Asian people as this model minority, and then also they do have paler skin, so it works out for the racist caste system, because Asian people typically have paler skin, which is more closely tied to whiteness, and they have longer straight hair, they have a lot of Eurocentric features that white people can identify with, and so of course they will say you all are the model minority. Indian, Pacific Islander, Middle Eastern people. These folks are, I don't know, I just felt like they should go here because I know the Latino community has such discrimination against them, especially right now. But I didn't want to forget these folks. And so I was just like, I feel like they go higher. I feel like they go higher. What is my justification? Beats me. I don't know. I think about the H-1B visas and how I think like 50% of H-1B visas came from India. And, Indians also have, longer straight hair. Not to say Hispanic people don't, but I don't know, something about, and like Pacific Islanders, I don't know, something about them I feel like is closer to like if I'm a white person, right, for putting my white person hat, and I'm looking at a group of people that I want to interact with, and none of them are white, and if like and Asians we've already established Asians, and I'm like, okay, I have an Indian or Pacific Islander, or Middle Eastern person here, and then I have a Latino person, and then I have a Black person. I just feel like as a white person, they would somehow gravitate toward Indian and Pacific Islander and Middle Eastern people. And I think that's also probably why, they put Kamala in seat, because she was half Indian. And I just think that is, I don't know, there's something about Indian is still kind of like it's still Asia. It's still in Asia, South Asia, I guess. But yeah, so I just feel like they would go there. And then Latino, Latinx, Hispanic community. And then of course, Black people are at the bottom. And I do, of course, want to point out, African immigrants who come to America, they do typically end up in the upper middle class, or millionaire business owner class. But again, those are the exceptions to the rule. In general, while African immigrants can, rise that is still a part of the system of, like, these people have darker or Black skin, and look at them, they still made it. And so why Black people do you still not have your Black Americans? Why don't you have your stuff together? That is it's a feature. It's a feature. It's not a bug. And then last system of control, a system that is in place that has a small amount of people controlling a lot of people, is religion. Abrahamic religion, specifically Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And so your highest person will be your prophet, or your person who feels like they can hear the messages from God, and they have these big messages from God, and they want to tell everyone what God has told them. And so they will be the ones who, like, create the cult, because it's usually a cult, usually a narcissistic cult leader who feels like they are this prophet sent from God, and they need to tell everyone what to do, and you have to listen to me because I am closest to God. And then you have your priests and your pastors and your first family, which your first family, like, that is like, even that is just like, it's a hierarchical like pattern of thinking. Like, your first family, that means you have a second family and a third family. That means you are number one, and then there's 2, 3, and 4, instead of like we're all coming up at the same time together. So I don't even like the term first family. But yes, your pastors, your priests, your people who are ordained ministers, they are the puppeteers. They are the ones who are spreading the word, spreading the messages. They're telling everyone what they should be doing. And then you got your deacons and your ushers, or other people, usually men, who are in positions of authority. And then you have your church workers or members, or people like who are doing the recordings, or like, the choir or the pianist, like the people who are using their skills and their labor as a volunteer of the church. Those people are have a higher regard within the church than everyone else in the general congregation. So those are the systems of control that are in place that create the matrix that we live in. Most people, again, don't even realize all of these things exist. And then the people who do realize they exist, mostly, mostly the people down here, we are the ones who know, well, maybe not the congregation, because they're pretty indoctrinated. But most of the people here, we know that these systems are on top of us, like pressing us down, oppressing us, making everything in the world harder. But we don't have any, but they've done everything. They've created these systems so that they have all of the money and the resources. They control the money and the resources, and they take away our ability to control these things on our own. And that makes it harder to break out of these systems, break out of the matrix. Okay, and so finally, and I know I want to wrap it up soon. um, I want to talk about these two layers of the system, specifically the second layer and the bottom layer. The bottom layer, we'll start there. Again, these are the people who actually generate the most value for the overall system. So queer people specifically, they've done so much when it comes to like creating equality, when it comes to like they've done the most work when it comes to breaking down gender roles, gender stereotypes. I think about Marsha P. Johnson and all the work that she did trying to get trans people rights, and like letting like, gay people like come out the closet, letting men be a little feminine, letting women be a little masculine. Like, the queer people have done all the work at dismantling any amount of the patriarchy, although they're currently trying to rebuild it as we speak. But shout out to all queer people who have done the work at trying to let the patriarchy know, like, just because you are born with a lady part, or you're born with a male part, that does not mean you have to go into this box, and it doesn't mean you have to go into this box. And I like to look at ancient Africa. It's just like, I just wish everyone would go back to ancient Africa. They actually didn't even have words for male and female. They had like animate or inanimate or living or non-living, but they didn't have words that actually identified gender, because gender was such a it is a non, like, nothing in the world is binary. Everything in the world exists on a spectrum. Everything exists on a spectrum, from like the color green, you got the darkest green ever and you got the lightest green ever, and then everything in between. From I don't know, a car, you have if you zoom out, a vehicle, you can have something as simple as a bike to something as complex as an airplane, and then all the cars and variations in between. Or if you just go down to one car, like the Ford, you can have a cheap Ford or an expensive Ford, and you have everything in between. Or like, it's just like everything. When I say everything, everything in the world exists on a spectrum. But these systems create the thinking that everything is binary, and nothing in the world is binary. It is not yes or no. It is not this or that. It is not up or down. It is not first or last. And it is literally everything in between. Okay, so anyways, that is, so shout out to queer people. Working class people everywhere have always have been the backbone of all of the economy. And then two, have done everything to try to work for like workers' rights, fair pay, like etc. It's like safety regulations. Every regulation we have is there's the blood of some worker who was shed in order to get those safety regulations for or protections for the working class. Individual contributors, they are the people who actually make all the products that we use today. Black people, Black people, thank you for all of our contributions. Basically every invention in America has been due to some sort of Black brain, Black influence, or Black creativity, and then white people have just taken it and put their name on it and say patented and say it's mine now. This is from, the stoplight, internet, Wi-Fi, cell phones, like literally anything, any technology, anything you got, a Black person was a part of the beginning of it. So shout out to us. And then again, this doesn't mean that other people have not helped with the contributions to things, but when it comes to these structures, these people at the bottom are the foundation of these structures, and they create the most value, period. They create the most value: music, entertainment, like inventions, like anything. They create, all of the Black people do all this. We create the most value, but it is extracted from us and then trapped at the top of these systems. And then a general congregation, these are the people who, they give their offerings, they give their tithes every single Sunday, every single month. They give all their money, they give their time, they give their energy. And then the people who get to actually keep it are these people at the top. So that is why the bottom is like the most powerful group, the most powerful group of people. And then also, for the most part, it is the most of them. Like, people, if I had to, how many people were queer versus straight, Nah, I would say 50% of the population is queer. Like, queer in some way, like if you're a woman who because queer doesn't necessarily mean gay or lesbian. It means you have any sort of attraction to the same sex. Like, it's just like any sort of attraction, or any sort of or even just like just if you feel more feel more masculine than feminine, if you're a woman, like any sort of non-traditional male, female, if you like, because like, again, when everything that exists on a spectrum, like the yes and the no, the 0 and the 1 of a binary, and it's like those are like those are the minority of the situations. Like, those extremes of the ends of the spectrum are the minority, and for the most part, everything exists in the middle. When you look at what is it called? Like the distribution curve for, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna go into statistics. It's fine. But anyways, I would say that this is 50% of people. Okay, so that is the bottom layer. The second layer, and here's why the second layer is so important. The second layer is the layer of people that creates the illusion that the system is not there, and that you as an individual can get to the top just by hard work and merit. So when you look at the traditional woman, they are I will call them these are your pick-me's. If I'm being honest, these are your pick-me's. But these are the women who uphold the patriarchy by saying, men should be in charge. Like, women should be in the kitchen. Women are supposed to be these feminine, dainty, non-powerful beings who nurture and take care of the children. Women shouldn't have any, masculine features. And so men who are, at the top of the patriarchy, who are benefiting the most from the patriarchy, they can point to these women and say like, hey, look, women, all of you feminists, or all of you like women who are complaining about the patriarchy, one, it doesn't exist. And two, even if it does exist, how could it exist? How can it exist if you have all of these women saying that they enjoy the lifestyle, they feel like this is how they should be, feels natural to them. Like these are the ones that show that, this oppression that you're complaining about doesn't exist. So that's the role of the second layer. The second layer in general is to show you that if you work hard enough, this can work. So same thing with the millionaires and billionaires, which kind of talked about that. Same thing with the C-suite people. These are like the faces of the millionaires. Like if you are in corporate America and you work your butt off, if you do what you're told, you follow authority, you don't ask questions, you blindly follow in faith, you too can be a CEO one day. You too can do all this stuff. Although they don't tell you that all the people who are CEOs, all the people who are millionaires, that they typically come from wealthy families in general anyways. They already start with a foot higher than everybody else. But no, they want you to believe that if you work your way up the corporate ladder and do what you're supposed to do, you can be a CEO. Same thing with Asian people. They say, look at all these Asian business owners, look at all these Asian engineers, all these intelligent Asian people. If you, Black person, you're always complaining about systemic oppression. Like you guys have the higher incarceration rates. That's your fault. Like you Latinx people, you guys, you can do better. You can be an immigrant and still make it over. Just look at these other groups of people. You just have to come legally. You have to, do it the right way. So it's just like these upper classes of people they gain the second most amount of benefits. They gain like this secondary authority and control, and they are also the example that people want you to see so that you don't lose faith. Because imagine a world where all of these people in these lower three categories said, hey, actually, I don't like how I'm being treated, and I don't feel like this is fair. And I know for a fact that this is a rigged system that I'm never going to be able to get to the top of. If we all like that is 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 98. So if this is 10, that's so like 90% of people are in these bottom three layers, but they have us, these 90% of people playing the Squid Games. They have us playing the Squid Games and have us thinking that one day we too can win. But when in reality, we were never going to win. We were never meant to win. And it was always supposed to be a few that make it out so that we can keep running the hamster wheel. Everyone talks about how they feel like they're running in the hamster wheel and going nowhere. And that's because this is the hamster wheel. This is the hamster wheel. It's like we keep running because we think in our minds we're going to go somewhere, but we're never going to go anywhere because the system, the matrix is set up so that we cannot go anywhere. And only that occasionally a few people here and there will pop out the top and make it. But that is just so that every time you feel like, oh, things are not working, they'll have one person win so that you feel like, okay, dang, I just got to keep going. And little do you know, you're going nowhere and you're going nowhere fast. People in this country have so much depression, have so much, anxiety, have all these issues. It's because we're living such unnatural lives because again, these systems are in place so that a certain persons can be on top. But what that means is if these systems were not in place, different people would be on top. Different things would be happening. It would not be like this. And so you have to understand that these systems, if they are not, they are there to benefit a literally 10% of the population. And really this should be 9 and this should be 1, and because this should be not 11%, it's 10%. But it's there to benefit a very small amount of the population. And if they were not there, everyone would benefit much more, benefits would be more equally and evenly distributed. But these systems are in place to ensure that a certain amount of people have a certain amount of certain amount of people have a certain amount of power, and that certain amount of people has too much power, while everyone else who is actually doing the work, getting up, putting it, busting their asses every day, that they don't have the power. And the same thing with this last one. All right, that is it. That was a lot. I hope that makes sense. I worked really hard on that, and I'm really proud of it because I do think it is a good way of showing that all of these systems are the same, and that is that's I'm gonna just beat that drum till the day that I die. Is that patriarchy, capitalism, racism, religion, and narcissism? And I always talk about how narcissism is the base, it's like the root of all of these systems, and then it's like if a narcissist were projected as I don't know, as a social system, capitalism would be it. If a narcissist was projected as a gender role system, it would be patriarchy. If narcissism was projected as racism, like it's just narcissism is when a person thinks they are superior to another person. They feel like they deserve. They're entitled to whatever they want. They're entitled to controlling other people. Narcissists feel like they are grandiose. They feel like they're better than everyone. And so the people at the top of these systems are typically narcissists, and they're typically narcissistic. Like Elon Musk, the billionaire, like he said, like they said, you're not supposed to have empathy. Narcissists don't have empathy. They don't have feelings. They don't feel for other human beings the way that most human beings feel. And these people rise to the top of these systems because they are narcissists, and these are narcissistic systems. It's not an accident. It is like, it's technically survival of the fittest, and a narcissist is going to be the most fit in a narcissistic system. That is why these people are rising to the top, because they have created, like, it's supposed to be survival of the fittest, and Mother Nature is the one who has the system in place, who has the environment that you have to be the fittest in that environment. But Mother Nature they put these systems to invert Mother Nature, because if it was survival of the fittest, it would be a darker skinned people, black skinned people, because it's like we well, I want to say like melanin one like that is why most people, that's why it's the global south, as they call it, has more, there are more people on this world with melanin than without, because it is evolutionarily speaking advantageous to have melanin, to get energy from the sun, to be able to be in the sun and not sunburn and not, get skin cancer and all these things. That is advantageous as a human being. And then there's just so many more things. Like there's just so many more things. I'm trying to wrap it up here. But these systems are artificial, man-made, and they're put in place to put a certain person in like the top of society, although when without the systems, naturally they would not be at the top of society at all whatsoever. And in fact, they would probably be outcast from society. And they would be outcast from society. These people would not be able to reproduce in a regular scenario of survival of the fittest, because women do not want to select for men who do not care about women and children. Like those people would be bred out of existence if natural selection was allowed to do its job properly. Okay, that is all. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for being here. If you want to hear more of this, you can always follow me on TikTok at Bri.Speaks. And you can, if you want to support, please do buy my hoodie at free2adhd.com. That's FREETOADHD.com. And follow me on YouTube if you're listening on Spotify at Bri.Speaks. Otherwise, I thank you for coming. I hope you learned something, and I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye.